Hey, what's up everyone? Morey Croson here, and today we're going to be going over how sprinters have such a great first step, and we'll start the video right now. This is the newest edition of the Performance Lab.
Reach your individual goals. You don't want to just talk about straight line speed. We also want to talk about your ability to be quick. We break down your video. Let's make you into the quarterback I know you can become.
Alright, so the big goal behind this YouTube channel is to be able to provide better context, better understanding for how to run faster. And part of that is going to obviously be how we get into our start. There's a ton that goes into the start that is really, really important. This is something that I've been looking a lot into because I just feel like with the foot and your ability to utilize the foot is critical when it comes to generating the right types of force, and that will make it so then you can get into faster and faster top speeds. And so I really want to be able to just concentrate on just the first step. And my overall philosophy, and I think this is a philosophy that a lot of people share, is that if you cannot understand or if you cannot explain this simply, then you do not understand it well enough. So my goal in making this video is to not only help you in understanding what it is that is essential when it comes to this first step, but also trying to provide as much detail as possible into this while keeping it as simple as possible. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is going to be an athlete that I've been working with, very, very great sprinter. And the reason I like the back view is it just gives a little bit more context behind what it is that we're going to be talking about. But it's something that we see with a lot of these really fast guys. They just have such a unique ability to keep their heel up very, very high when the foot is hitting the ground. And recently I was going through and looking through some video to figure out, like, how can we maximize our feet to be able to run faster? And I'm going to continue to make more videos about this because I think there's just so much in there that can help you in being able to really maximize your speed. And so we're going into the first step, right? And an important part of the foot, and I really didn't even realize this, I was watching a video and they talked a lot about it, is the difference between an open chain and closed chain. Right, and so we can see right here we're actually a closed chain, and then here it's going to be open chain action. So this is where really this athlete is in a position of more of an open chain and also more plantar flexion. And what's very, very interesting and what's really important to be able to understand is when we're going through the action of really dorsiflexion, right? So open chain dorsiflexion. So you can see the toes more down and he's kind of lifting that foot up, okay? And what is important here is dorsiflexion creates and I don't want to go too much into it. So essentially dorsiflexion is lifting your toes up. Plantar flexion is bringing the feet back down. But what happens is there's a flip between when the foot is in a closed chain, which is when the foot's on the ground or touching the ground, in comparison to open chain in terms of how the structures are working. And why that's important is because when we look to see the foot and when it's hitting the ground, right, we want to be able to differentiate between is this dorsiflexion or is this plantar flexion, because when our foot hits the ground, we're actually flipping what our foot is doing because it's going from open chain to closed chain. And so what I mean by that is he in dorsiflexion, right, and then hitting the ground with the foot flexed, right, or is he in more of a plantar flexion where the foot is more extended, okay? And based off of that, okay, and what I'm looking at here and what my opinion is that really it's more of a plantar flex and supinated. So right here we're looking at more of a pronated position, right? And then here's more of a supinated position. And this is going to be when the foot is on the ground. When the foot hits the ground, though, we can see that it's in more of like a supinated position at foot contact, right? And the foot is actually almost traveling laterally, okay? And then at contact is when we go into a pronated position, and really the leg and hip start to go into more external rotation. So we can see the femur goes from internal rotation, right, or the leg goes from internal rotation, so it's like everything's turned in, to then everything starting to turn out within the foot, okay? And so this ends up being more of like a rotating type of a axis, right, which means that we're not doing a ton of bending at the shin, right? So even the ankle bone, is not bending a lot. Okay, so we don't really want to end up having too much forward and back motion. Okay, but there is rotation happening there, right? Which means that we're moving more within, which means when the ankle bone is hitting, we have more movement happening here. So this is going to be more of like a plantar flexion and dorsiflexion part of the ankle, right? And then this is going to be more of a like rotational kind of frontal plane side to side. So when we're hitting, we can see that there's not a lot of extension going on, but instead we have a lot of motion going on at the heel joint, right? So like the heel is turning and the calcaneal bone, right? And then this is the talus bone. So it's like the calcaneal talar joint that is the joint that ends up taking on the action of landing, okay? And being able to understand how to be able to control that is essential, right? So we want to be able to be, to me, we want to be in a plantar flex position, okay? We also want to be in a slightly more supinated position, which is more natural when we're in a plantar flex position, which is why I kind of think that it is more plantar flex because of, being in a supinated, which is more of like the toe side being down, right? And also plantar flex position, so that as the foot hits, there's an absorption into pronation, which is where more of like the inside part of the foot kind of comes down, right? So we can see how that inside part of the foot comes down as we're absorbing, and that calcaneus muscle ends up coming in, the calcaneal bone ends up coming in, and also, the talus ends up being helping and being able to stabilize, right? And then we go back into pushing off into that plantar flex position, right? So we land in that plantar flex position in more of a supinated spot, right? We transition, we allow more pronation to happen, we allow that calcaneus to kind of load into that spot there, right? So now we can see the twisting that's happening within that joint, right? And then as we're pushing back off, now we're getting back into internal rotation of the hip, right? Which allows us to then move through that ankle joint and through that, again, calcaneal talus joint into pushing off and extending, and then driving right back through. So we're in plantar flexion, then coming right back into dorsiflexion, up and through, internal rotation, and then hitting back on the ground into plantar flexion. So again, I hope I didn't make that too complex there, right? But I really want you guys to be able to understand that the joint that ends up moving here, okay, so the joint that's moving when off the ground, open chain, is this joint, okay, because we go from plantar flexion, right, extending, to now going into dorsiflexion, internal rotation, okay, but that makes it so then we can get our foot into a position where we can reposition into this supinated position, right, so the foot's kind of on more of the outside, and also pushing back down into the ground, which is getting more plantar flexion. And then once the foot hits the ground, now all the action that ends up happening is going to be more within the calcaneal joint. We want it to be the best that we can within the calcaneal joint, which makes it very, very important, if we look on more of the side view, to be able to maintain a great dorsiflex position during the landing, or shin position. So when the foot's hitting, the shin needs to be as far forward as possible in order to make it so then we can get the optimized push off within the foot. Okay, what happens is that if the shin ends up being too vertical here, now we're going to be utilizing a different part of the foot, and that's going to make it so we spend a lot more time on the ground. The way to be able to optimize the time is to make it so we end up rotating within the calcaneal talar joint, rather than making a lot of movement happening within that tibia talus joint, right? So that the tibia is going to be the shin bone, right? And then that joint that I was showing you before with the talus, that joint ends up doing more flexion and extending, okay? But when we see this, there's not a lot of movement happening there. That joint isn't really having very much movement. That joint is very stable. Instead, we want to be moving primarily through that calcaneus joint. So it's really important to have plenty of range of motion through that bone, right? That calcaneus bone, that ankle bone, and also be able to have plenty of stability within that your ankle, or the connection between your tibia and your talus, in order to make it so you can run faster, get off the ground quicker, have that really elite foot contact time. So there's a lot of anatomy that we went into there. I know that might have ended up making it more complex, and I know some of you guys might not get it 100%. but watch it again. Let me know if you have any questions. We'd be happy to help you guys out. Check out some of the things we have in the description down below. And of course, if you like the video, go and click that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. That really helps us out a ton. And, you know, as always, when you watch these videos, and if you get something or if you find something that really ends up being, in your mind, beneficial, then leave a comment. You know, check out the description. Also, like, let's join a program. Let's get a part of the community here. There's a lot of things that we have offered for you that I think are great prices. Things that are like a 3-month program for $97. I don't think you can get anything like that that will be able to provide that much value. But then also like the video. Again, that's huge. Subscribe to the channel. All that is very, very beneficial and very important in order to continue to grow the channel. If this video also helps you out, share it. That makes a big difference too. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.